Thank you, Davis. We've given people a couple minutes to fill in, so thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ryan Rice. I am the membership coordinator here at Freedom of the Press Foundation. I am joined today by my colleagues, Davis Erin Anderson and Dr. Martin Shelton. Today's event is called Prepared, Not Scared, Digital Security Training for the Election Season. This session will provide the starting point for you to know how to establish strong digital security posture as you make your way through 2024. It will cover case-specific topics in digital security that can help keep journalists safe while conducting election coverage, including device protection, safeguarding communications, mitigating for harassment, and preparing for a post-election future. There are a couple questions that I'm going to drop in the chat for you to participate in throughout this training, so pay attention. And we do ask you that you fill out the survey at the end of this. This session will be recorded, and I'll put it in the archives after. So again, thank you everybody for joining us. Welcome, and I'll hand it off to Davis to introduce herself and kick things off.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It is such a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Davis Erin Anderson, and I am the newest member of Freedom of the Press Foundation's Digital Security Training team. I joined in August, and it has been lovely to work with my colleagues, including Martin. So Dr. Martin Shelton, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hey folks, I'm Martin Shelton. I'm the principal researcher at Freedom of the Press Foundation. I work with the digital security training team. And for now, I'm just going to settle into the chat. Going to encourage everybody to drop any questions throughout in the chat at any time. And yeah, we'll answer live.
Yes, we do welcome your participation. So what Martin said. So our first order of business is to let you know about our newsletter. It comes out weekly. Martin writes the newsletter. It is very friendly and approachable. It takes the view of current news in the digital security space. And fortunately, we don't have news every week. I think that's fortunate because this is a tricky topic, and no news is sometimes good news. But in the event there is news, Martin is here to cover it and also give some tips and techniques for what to do in the face of the information that we're presenting each week. So there is the link. I trust that Martin will drop it into chat. I do highly recommend reading it. So, but as for today, what are we doing here exactly? We are all very well aware that the United States is about to enter into an election year, or is actually already in an election year. Election Day in the United States takes place on Tuesday, November 5, 2024. It is one of the most active year in the world for elections. So it doesn't just affect the US, it is almost global this year. Election years have been historically very challenging for journalists. And so we wanted to offer this session to give you our best tips and techniques for how to stay safe with your devices as we all sort of process this year. So here is our agenda. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about protecting your devices and how to safeguard your communications. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to prepare for any harassment that might come your way. We hope not, but preparation is very important. We'll talk to you a little bit about phishing techniques and tactics, and then we'll help you future-proof your plans. In the middle there, we also have a break, so you can look forward to that, at which point we'll hand the reins over to Martin. First things first is never forget the basics. And let's talk about what I mean by the basics. As I do, I'm going to ask Ryan to please pull up our first poll question because I would love to hear from the audience. Can you guess or estimate even how many hacking-related breaches were caused by stolen credentials last year? We'll get that poll going and we'll see what you think. As you fill out that answer, I want to share with you that a lot of heartache can be solved with three things. First, make sure each account has a unique password. That is a one-to-one relationship between the account and its password. In other words, please don't reuse them. And I'll get into why when we reveal the answer to the poll question. Most of us have hundreds of accounts. My personal password manager has over 325 passwords in it. So having long, unique, and random passwords is honestly a lot to remember. And this is why we recommend using a password manager. The screen cap here shows what my 1Password account looks like on the back end. We also recommend Bitwarden. And if you need help choosing a password manager, we have some guidance for you that Martin will drop into chat. So as you're doing this, we recommend setting up two-factor authentication on every account that allows it. 2FA, or two-factor authentication for short, for long, is your second line of defense around your accounts and also helps to stave off phishing attacks, which we will get into in a few minutes. So, Ryan, if you don't mind closing this poll, and we can find out what the big reveal is. So most folks thought that the answer is between 50 and 75%. 30% of you thought that the answer is between 75 and 100, and 20% of you said, you can see these answers, I think, between 25 and 50. So I'm going to tell you what the answer is. Prepare to be surprised. The big reveal is that 86% of website application breaches were caused by account hijacking, according to the 2023 Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. So this number is actually down from previous reports, but only by 3%. So 86% is a staggering amount considering the amount of passwords that we have available, and also indicates how many breaches we're faced with on a year-to-year basis. So it's a lot. So this is why we recommend that you take those 3 steps, which are, just to repeat, setting up unique, random, and long passwords, getting a password manager into your life, and setting up 2FA as much as you possibly can. So studies show that the average person has over 227 password protected accounts, which is a lot to work through, especially if you're just getting started. So if this is news to you and you are in the habit of using one strong password for everything, don't worry, you're not alone. We hear this all the time. So this is our #1 piece of advice, and one that I hope people bring on board. So I'm going to share with you some ways to get started if this is something that you'd like to embark upon. I'll just say success for me, if this session is successful, means that those of you who are listening will go offline, get your password manager started, and then take these steps. So first things first is identify which accounts are your most sensitive. Think to yourself, which accounts are the ones that you want to protect right here and now? For me, that's my bank account, my social media accounts. My email account is hugely important. I think Martin would remind us all that email is where recovery codes are often sent. So we want to make sure that that is specifically locked down as best as possible. And also my iCloud account, which backs up all my data from my computer. So if you would indulge me into chat and let me know, what accounts would you like to protect first things first? If you had to choose just one account that you think is the most sensitive one in your life, let us know. I'd love to hear from you in chat. So once you've got your password manager up and running, you can take a stock of those accounts that you've listed to yourself out loud or hopefully in chat shortly, and replace existing passwords with a pass manager generated ones. And while you're at it, set up your preferred second factor. From there, you may want to add your account name, its URL, your new password, and your new recovery codes or your old recovery codes into your password manager. And yes, your email account is definitely one that we recommend. We're getting seconds for that. And banking, yes, I agree on all those accounts. Okay, so once you've got those super sensitive ones into your password manager along with its URL, your password and recovery codes, then you can sort of live your life. And as you go, just keep an eye out. Where are you entering a password that might be something that you're repeating? That's where you want to take the moment that you can to update your accounts going forward. So you're sort of getting your most sensitive ones locked down right away, and then proceeding with your life as you go, and then make sure you're updating as you log into things. So I'd love to know, what do you make of this advice, and does it sound accomplishable to you? So let us know in chat what you think. Okay, that is literally my best advice for everyone. Second to that is protecting your devices. So now that your accounts are well protected, let's take some time to make sure your devices are secure too. I don't know about you, but basically anywhere I go in my life, I've got my phone with me, either in my hand or in my pocket. It is never like very far from my body, which is sort of the sad state of affairs, but that's how it sort of is. So my phone is something that I want to protect really well. Along with my computer, which I bring to and fro from work and home. So these are ones that I've got my eye on in terms of making sure that I'm keeping everything super, super safe. One reason why that this is important, especially important in an election year, is because the Press Freedom Tracker, which is a service that we run here from Freedom of the Press Foundation, it documents press freedom incidents in the United States. Since the project's inception in 2017, 109 separate election-related incidents have taken place. 17 of them included equipment search, damage, search, or seizure. The graph on this slide, the part on the right shows that November and January are high watermarks for these types of incidents, which makes now, April, a great time to get yourself set up. So if you're heading into the field, if you're planning on going to a convention, if you are going to be on the scene on election day, it's really important to start thinking now about what you're going to do with your devices. So thinking once again, what assets on your mobile device do you want to protect? So we know there's things in accounts, and now we can think about our devices. Sometimes there's overlap, and sometimes there's unique information that you want to protect. So I'd love to hear from you. Are you planning on covering election-related events this year? You can just drop yes or no into chat. That's fine. And if you're not covering something, we still recommend taking some precautions because, like I said, our devices go everywhere that we go. So here are some assets that might be worth protecting that you are carrying on your device. So communication, your messages with sources, those can be highly privileged and confidential. Thank you, Tatiana. I will definitely let you know. Photos and videos that you're taking can be quite sensitive too. Your contacts might reveal who you're talking to, especially if you're a reporter. These types of communications are privileged and should be treated that way. And finally, any notes that you're taking might be something you'd like to protect. So you can do this by looking at your notification settings. So when we're using encrypted apps, and we'll talk about that shortly, one way that we can be super sensitive and protect our information is through using communications that are encrypted, but we can also out ourselves a little bit if our notifications are telling on us. So notification settings can be the thing that enhances or even derails your excellent work in keeping your communications secure. I know some of you might have visited or even live in New York City, and you have experienced where on the train and someone's looking at their phone to your left and your right. I look around pretty much every day and see that most people are on their phones. Something that happens a lot is that people might see over into our devices, which we call shoulder surfing. So one way to make sure that you're protecting your information is to set your notification settings so that your apps don't drop down when someone communicates with you and shares sensitive information. If you're interested in keeping people from knowing your whereabouts, a good place to look is in your location settings. So you can head into your settings application. There's fortunately search bars. I know these things are super long nowadays, but we have search bars in the menus that allow us to drill down into what we're looking for. So you can literally type location into your menu and find all the places where apps are tracking your whereabouts. And you can go ahead and just turn those off for apps that don't need it. In fact, one setting I like to use a lot is apps that can only access my location when I'm using them. That way I know I have peace of mind that when I don't have the app actively working for me, then the app is not able to track my location. And finally, if you want to protect the data on your device from interference, then I say challenge yourself to set a high quality passcode. Nowadays, your phone requires 6-digit passcodes. First and foremost, make sure that is turned on. And secondly, please make sure, or please try to come up with as long of a passcode as you can think of. For me, you can use alphanumeric passcodes, so you can make that little keypad show up, and you can type in alphanumeric passcodes that way. I like to map like the old-fashioned phone numbers where it was like 1-800, I don't know, USA Rail is the Amtrak one where the numbers map to the digits. I use that for mine. So I have a word and I use those numbers to reflect that word. And it's quite long, and I feel better and better about it. So it is a democratic year, so let's vote. So you know that you can open your devices with Face Unlock. Do you think it is good or bad? I think we have a poll question for that. Yes, there we go. So a poll is across your screen and you can let us know how you feel about Face Unlock. And I already see in chat, someone thinks it is bad. Would you like to elaborate on why you think Face Unlock is bad? I would love to hear your opinion on this because it is nuanced, this topic. I'm going to take a sip of water while you fill out that poll and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm assuming everyone had a chance to click one of those So Ryan, if you want to reveal the results. Okay, a solid half of you are against face unlock. Yes, please do elaborate in chat because that's an interesting result. So like I said, it's nuanced. So there are some pros and cons. Pros include, let me move the poll out of the way. Actually, yeah, thank you. Pros include you can open your phone quickly when you need it. Also, you can still record media when the phone is unlocked, and you have the Fourth and Fifth Amendments to the US Constitution to help you out. On the other hand, in the cons, you can be physically forced to open a device by an unlawful adversary. Question for us to think about is, do we trust lawful adversaries to honor the US Constitution nowadays anyway? And finally, you might not be able to remove biometrics in time. So I would like to hand things over to Martin to share a little bit about how you recommend people switching between face unlock and passcodes on their phone.
Definitely, yeah. And I saw some comments in chat that I think are also really interesting here is just how much of this is a moving target. Right now, there's various courts that disagree on whether or not this kind of information, biometric information, is actually something that can be compelled as testimonial in courts. So that's something to consider. But as far as lockdown mode goes, so there's a couple of different ways to think about this. It is possible to, on both iPhones and on Android devices, pretty much immediately lock your device so that biometrics are disabled. You can do that with the shutdown screen on iPhone. That can be activated by pressing the power button 5 times. Note that you do not want to do the emergency call here. That will call the police. You don't really want to do that. So just make sure to practice this before trying this out in the wild. Build up that muscle memory a little bit. On Android, in your settings, you can activate something called lockdown mode. And this basically does the same thing. When you go to your power button and you hold that, you're going to see lockdown mode appear. And then when you see lockdown mode and you press on that, it's going to disable your biometrics. So that might be a fingerprint, that might be a face scan. Regardless, it's going to turn that off. Note that this is not the same as lockdown mode within iOS or within your iPhone, which needs to be set up. That is a very different thing that just boosts a bunch of different security settings. So this is just, we're only right here talking about disabling biometrics.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, so I agree, needless to say. And I guess with lockdown mode, they ran out of words to use when naming tech features. So it creates a little bit of confusion for us, but we're smart and we can get past it. So I do want to promote full disk encryption, which protects our data. You can use BitLocker on Macs and now I'm forgetting what it's on sorry, iDevices. Martin, if you want to chime into chat and remind me, please. Just remember 2 things. One is that for your computers, turning them off all the way is how you get them to be encrypted. And Fileball, thank you. I was just using disk utility for like 3 hours and now my mind is over there. And a passcode is the way that we unlock them. So that means turn off your devices when you're traveling. And it also means that having a good, strong passcode is the way to go. The good news is that FDE, for short, is enabled by default on your phones and your computers these days. But as always, we can challenge ourselves to go even further. The research I was just doing before I got on the call has to do with encrypting USB drives to be used in the field. So quick plug, if you're interested in learning more, we are available for trainings. So you can hit us up. We'll give our contact information later if you want to know more about that research. And here it is. Look to BitLocker on Windows and Disk Utility on Macs for that information. I guess it's Fileball here. I guess my mind was on Disk Utility even when I wrote these slides. Oops. So yes, what about your passcode? So it's important enough that I'll say it again. Your passcode is super important. It is what decrypts the data on your phone. So as with your accounts, aim to make your phone's password random, unique, and long. Default passcodes are 6 digits long, but again, consider this a challenge. How can you make it even better? Can you use an alphanumeric passcode to make your computer even more secure? And remember, you can always return to face unlock and other biometrics when the coast is clear. So finally for me, I'll talk to you a little bit about safeguarding your communications. So when you chat or email with someone, your message is sent from your device to theirs. There are intermediaries involved in this, including your ISP, which is your internet service provider, or your cell phone provider, and the platform that you are using to relay your message. In-transit encryption means that your encryption means that your communications will be readable when they are moving from your device to another device, but they also may be able to be read by these intermediaries. So we like in-transit encryption to an extent. But the takeaway here is even with in-transit encryption, most chat providers can decrypt your communications. So if you opt for a service that uses end-to-end encryption, only you and your contact will be able to read those messages. This level of confidentiality is baked into how providers like Signal and WhatsApp function, so we are pro Signal especially. Because of this, intermediaries like your ISP and your cell phone company will have no idea what you're saying when you're communicating. And we like that very much. So here's a case study involving Paul Manafort. The headline here reads, Paul Manafort learns that encrypting messages doesn't matter if the feds have a warrant to search your iCloud account. The takeaway here is that encryption is great and all, but it is critically important to understand where your data is stored and under what circumstances it can be revealed and reviewed in case of something like a search warrant. Meanwhile, here's a tweet from our friend and board member, Edward Snowden. Using a service like Signal is a great move. Their protocol was written to not only provide end-to-end encryption, but to avoid logging critical details like when your message was sent and to whom. This sort of data, the aboutness, if you will, of your message is what we call metadata. And our colleague wrote recently a guide to metadata. It's called Metadata 101. And Martin, if you could please drop that link into chat. We also provide some useful information about Signal in our resource pack, for which we will give you a link as well. So here's a definition if you'd like to read things. Metadata is data about your data. It's meta, in other words. Metadata itself can be quite revealing. Here is a training tool that our team likes to use. This is a chart that shares how we view privacy versus utility of the apps that you can see here. Ryan, we've got another poll for this one. We would love to know from our viewers, which of the following communication platforms do you use on a routine basis? And you can, I believe, select all that apply. This will help me figure out which ones to talk about from this chart. All right, shall we reveal the answers? All right, so it looks like a lot of folks are using WhatsApp. That tracks very, very closely to what you see on the screen here, where WhatsApp is all the way over there on the x-axis near basically Taylor Swift. So yes, it is a very, very popular platform. 70% of the folks who answer the poll use Signal, which is wonderful because as you can see on this chart here, Signal is all the way up on that y-axis towards super privacy preserving because as we just mentioned, they do not store much metadata at all. So we are very pro Signal. In fact, FPF was an incubator for Signal at one point in time. So we recommend it very highly. And we have a guide for how to make the best possible use of Signal that we are happy to share later on. Okay, so speaking of, here are some benefits that I like to highlight about Signal. Signal lets you take and send photos, videos, and record audio. So that helps you do your reporting from the field and share it with anyone who might want it, or you can keep it safe and sound to yourself. You can use Signal for group calls, voice and video, both. A feature that we use a lot here at FPF. You can also, and this was new to me, I love this feature, you can use the note to self feature as an alternative to your note-taking app. So you can, instead of using the out-of-the-box note app that your phone comes with, you can use the one in Signal. Those can disappear as well you can set, I didn't put this here, but you can set the messages in Signal to disappear, which means that they would get removed from your phone and also the phone of your conversational partners too. So you can even set your disappearing message up to like a day, so things are ephemeral in that way too. And this is hot off the press, so to speak. You can now use usernames instead of phone numbers when using Signal. And Martin is our foremost expert on Signal. So Martin, welcome back. If you want to share a little bit about usernames.
Sure, yeah. So this is a really cool set of new features that they've just rolled out. The long and short of it is that there's two different things that are happening here with some of these more recent privacy-related updates. You have first usernames and then second discoverability. Within Signal now you can set up usernames by clicking on your little profile image at the top left corner within your app, and you go into your privacy settings, and then from there, or on your account settings, and then from there you'll see an option to enable usernames. Now you can have a username that is basically something that you could share with anybody as opposed to using a phone number like you had to in the past. However, that's different than discoverability. So you can actually disable phone number discoverability if you want to. You don't have to do this by default. That is actually not enabled, but you can turn that off if you want to. The other thing to consider is that if somebody doesn't have you in their phone contact list, they're going to see your username instead. However, if they do have you in the phone contact list, there's that all bets are off. They already have your phone number, so it will continue to show up in Signal as well. So just remember that it's not completely removing phone numbers out of the equation. This is the phone numbers are still going to be visible to somebody who already has your phone number.
Thank you, Martin. All right. So what's your plan for communicating in this election year? Make your tools safer to use. Here's how. You can set disappearing messages. That includes an expiry date on sensitive conversation. As I said just a minute ago, they'll auto-delete on everyone's devices, including yours. Focus on notification privacy. As I mentioned earlier, also, keeping your sensitive messages secure means keeping the content off your lock screen as well. So you can head on into notification settings and set that up for yourself. And finally, protect your service account. Set a PIN on your Messenger account to protect against impersonation. And I like this a lot, actually. Signal asks you to enter your PIN in on a regular basis, which helps everyone remember it. If they didn't do that, I probably would never remember my PIN. So thank you, Signal, for helping me with my memory. So how can we safeguard our communications? Wait, this might be a repeat. Excuse me, 1 second. All right, I guess it's time for questions. Apologies for shifting back in the deck. What questions do you have for us? Martin and I would be happy to answer. Martin, I wonder if you have any thoughts on Viber. It's not one that I've researched personally, and if you haven't either, then I would be happy to share our contact information so we can look it up and then be in touch with Maria separately.
So this is also one that I'm not as familiar with, and we're definitely happy to send any follow-ups if you would email us individually. But my understanding is that Viber does use the Signal protocol, which means that, you know, just like WhatsApp, just like Signal, it should be end-to-end encrypted. There are some caveats with some of these applications, and so I would definitely want to research before before overpromising anything in Viberland. Say WhatsApp, for comparison, doesn't necessarily do encrypted backups by default, so there might be settings that could compromise your security. We'd want to definitely research that before committing to any additional answers on that question.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, please do email us. We are happy to look into anything specifically. Do you have any resources on how to use PGP keys if that is something that you recommend? Martin, you can, I was just doing this on Monday, so I have like an answer ready to go, but I'd love to hear from you too, if you have any thoughts on PGP.
Oh,
If you don't,
well,
that's okay, I've got it.
this is something that gives me nightmares. I don't want to deal with PGP anymore, but it is something. It is kind of a Swiss Army knife. So there are times when definitely do need to try that out. I personally use the Electronic Frontier Foundation's resources on this front. I found that they are pretty exhaustive and pretty step by step. But yeah, Davis, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I've heard the news about PGP being kind of a pain, so I put it off until recently to like really dig in. So I was practicing earlier this week. You may know that Proton Mail is encrypted when you are messaging with another Proton Mail user, but the question comes up, what if you're not? Not everyone's on Proton Mail. What you can do is use a service called Mailvelope to use PGP in a different type of email provider. So Mailvelope and Gmail went pretty well together. So you can, yes, we've got a second in chat about Mailvelope. So you can install a plugin essentially, and then a little Mailvelope symbol comes up. So instead of hitting compose in Gmail, you hit Mailvelope, it pops up a new window, you type your message, you can add a signature, which just adds another layer of protectiveness to that message. And then you can just fire it off. It encrypts the communications and any attachments that you apply. And then I was emailing myself basically, which was, I shouldn't admit that out loud maybe, but that's how I was testing it. So I'd go into my Proton Mail account and take a look. Proton Mail decrypts automatically, which was something that I was interested to learn. So you can set a password for your email recipient from Proton Mail to whoever you're emailing, and they'll just need that password to decrypt the message. But not so when you do it the other way around. So in case that confuses anyone else, there you have it.
And we should say that a lot of these things it takes two to tango, right? So you need both people to use PGP in order to make use of any of these tools. That's the case with Proton Mail, for example. It's automatically encrypted between Proton Mail users. And then you can use these things with other PGP users beyond the application that you're using. It's supposed to be interoperable, but your mileage may vary on how usable that is between each one of these applications. Yeah.
Indeed. Last call for questions before we go on our break. Excellent. So we do have a 5-minute stretch during which you can think through anything that we've told you today so far. And when we reconvene, and Martin will call us back to order in 5 minutes, please let us know what your questions are, and we'd be happy to talk those through. So,
All right. It's that time again. We are back. If you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. It's fpf.training/subscribe. I will never apologize for saying it this many times. We're trying to escape from X/Twitter. That's not true. We're not escaping it, but we want to diversify. So let's get into the newsletter game. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about harassment. This is unfortunately something that we fully expect is going to be a major problem during this election season, as it is every year, but in particular on an election season. UNESCO had done some research where they surveyed 1,100 journalists who identify as women, and 44% said that election coverage precipitated some kind of online harassment toward them. And unfortunately, we have a lot of examples of this. One such example is when conservative operatives who were allied with the White House collected dossiers of journalists who were critical of the former president. So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of different directions that we can go in order to address some of our concerns here. First, some really quick things that we can do concern some of our security practices, and then some kind of longer term strategic things can involve some of our privacy practices. And we're going to share a resource pack after this where we'll have all of these different types of settings all listed out. Let's talk about the privacy settings first. What does this all boil down to? Well, we want to know who's able to look us up, whether that's by phone number, our emails, our real names, who's able to see your connections, the friends, followers that you have on social media, who's able to see those posts, who can tag you in posts, and then also who's able to message you. And taking kind of an inventory of all of these things is going to make it a lot easier to prepare for any potential harassment that we're experiencing, as opposed to being reactive when we're in stress brain and it's really difficult to address these things when we're really stressed out. So now is a good time to get started doing some of these things. A lot of this also starts with outlining the online footprint that you might have. So that really just means going through some of your old posts, trying to make sure that you don't have any extra personal information out there. There's also some advanced privacy settings. We'll have these listed in the resource pack, of course, but there might be particular high risk moments. Say, for example, if you're preparing to do some particularly politically sensitive reporting and you're expecting to get some pushback on it, happens all the time. There might be a moment when we want to lock down accounts a little bit more, let the flood pass, and then you can continue to do things as normal. So what does it mean to outline your digital footprint? There's some examples of data that might be particularly sensitive that could give a harasser some idea about your whereabouts, make it a lot easier for them to make your life more difficult. Things like location information. Sometimes this is attached to posts that we might have put out there in the past. Favorite spots, like if you ever like tagging yourself at your favorite coffee place, anything like that. Have photos of places that you like to frequent. This can point to information about the day-to-day routine. Photos that we might put out there could be a little bit revealing about what kind of places that we like to hang out. Future plans. This one's really tricky because, and this is something that I struggle with, because I have to announce where I'm going to be some of the time. If you're going to a conference, you're going to be speaking somewhere. You're going to give a training like this. Sometimes it's in person. I'm letting people know that I'm going to be in a certain place. And journalists need to do this all the time. So this is something that can be a little bit tricky to negotiate. There are times when we don't absolutely have to put it out there, and in those circumstances, maybe let's withhold some extra information. Then you also have family and social web. So those visibility settings that we've spoken about earlier, those could be really revealing about, say, hey, other people who share my last name, could they be family members? A bad guy could take advantage of that, go snoop into who all the family members are. Maybe those are also people who are posting photos of you. I have a family member who I had to talk to about, hey, maybe don't post my photo everywhere on Instagram, please. So that's something that also can happen. Then there's also search engines. Google is actually pretty cool about this. I would say about 75% of the time when I've worked with the journalists on getting certain types of personally identifiable information off of Google, they've actually complied with the request. So you can go to Google and look for remove PII from Google. And what's going to happen with that is Google will say, hey, what kinds of personally identifiable information are you concerned about and why? And you can say it's because of doxing. Usually what you're going to do is you're going to provide the type of information on the web page in question. So if you're able to find this information yourself, say somebody has listed your phone number somewhere, a social security number, this is not generally going to be applicable to just the presence of your name somewhere, but if it's something that's more sensitive information, typically they can be pretty okay with taking that down. Note that this does not mean that they are going to be able to do anything about the original website. They're just removing the Google search entry for that website. And, Google is a pretty powerful tool for doing this kind of investigation. The bad guys are probably not going to be trying out Bing after this, so just something to keep in mind. So here's some examples of the different types of information in question. Like I said, you got things like some like social security number, that kind of thing. But there's also things like bank account numbers and credit cards and IDs, signatures. There's actually quite a number of things going on here. Potentially even confidential login credentials, as we said earlier, and we'll revisit that. All right. Speaking of confidential login credentials, let's talk a little bit about phishing. So, what is phishing? Typically, this is just somebody trying to convince you to hand over your credentials or download something nasty onto your computer to try to exfiltrate information from you, malware. This might also be somebody who is impersonating a familiar or trusted entity. Maybe there's a website that you actually visit quite a lot, and they might try to pretend to be that website. And if they seem like it's legit, you might click on the link that they're sending along. Social pressure and a sense of urgency are also a really important part of how these things are done. So I'm going to give some examples of what that looks like. There's also spear phishing. Spear phishing is phishing just more targeted. So typically the attacker is going to try to do a bunch of extra research in order to make the lure that they're going to put in front of you look more plausible. So what they might do, we see this at media organizations all the time. So they might say, hey, I'm the executive director. They'll fill in the name of the executive director in their email. It looks like a plausible looking email that they created for this purpose. So sometimes people aren't taking a super close look at those emails. And then in turn, when one of the employees gets this email, they might go, oh, okay, well, that's the executive director. They're asking for something. Sure, I'll click on the link. Or if you ever get something that says, hey, I need these I need these gift cards like now. That's a big red flag too. So okay. So some examples of this. This is from a report from Proofpoint, and this is a security research firm. And so this report shows how we know that state-aligned actors around the world, some of these include China, North Korea, Turkey, Iran, are dealing with sending journalists malicious emails. In this report, they say that the work email addresses are a very particular type, a very prioritized target for some of these threat actors. For example, they tend to try to steal Twitter and X credentials so that they can look at sensitive contacts of journalists. They might do this by impersonating Twitter or X, saying someone logged into your account and that you should check it, and then they'll send you a fake link. They'll send malicious files, such as Microsoft Word files that have embedded malware. Sometimes they also have PDFs. Even in this case, the PDFs were not themselves embedded with malware, but they have malicious links that send you to phishing pages. And then they will also sometimes impersonate journalists to deliver malware. Say, for example, they'll try to get in touch with a PR person by impersonating a journalist and saying, hey, like this is a big deal for your company. You better click this. So here's one of the most famous phishing lures in the world. This is one sent to a John Podesta, who, if I recall correctly, was Hillary Clinton's campaign chair in 2016. And the attackers in this case, they wanted to get into his email, and they succeeded. He did a lot of the right things at first. He sent this to his IT team. His IT team circled back to him and said, hey, this looks good to me. So he was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and click on this email. And if you look at this from a different view, here's a different view of this email. So what we have here is an email that has a bit.ly link hiding behind the button that says change password. Bit.ly is a URL shortener. Google doesn't need to use bit.ly. Why would they use bit.ly? This is somebody trying to obfuscate the true destination of this link. They're trying to hide it behind a bit.ly link. First, Google has their own their own their own their own URL shortener. It's goo.gl. They don't need to use anything like this. But let's say that everything was nice and clean, like you would see a Google URL. That's not what we're seeing here. So phishing and spear phishing, it's not just about emails. We've primarily used email examples so far, but this is not just about emails. They're getting a lot more finely tuned. They're doing a lot of fancier footwork when it comes to trying to deliver these things. Sometimes you're going to get these over text messages, perhaps phone calls. There might be sometimes other types of approaches where they're getting even more creative. It's not particular to email. So we don't want to get hung up on email. The important thing to know is that people are going to try to impersonate somebody who you trust, and then in turn try to get you to click on that malicious link or click on that malicious file, share information to which they're not entitled. Some stuff to look out for in any of these messages, because we have a lot of increasingly sophisticated tools for catching spam. What they might end up doing is they might do things like they're going to use typos and bad grammar in order to bypass spam filters. Sometimes they'll use things like fuzzy images as opposed to like a real life Dropbox photo. They might use a kind of fuzzy version of it in order to try to bypass those spam filters. URLs that don't have any connection to the service. Why do you need a bit.ly link for a Google security notification? Unsolicited attachments. If you are getting something from somebody that's attached to an email and you're not expecting it, that's something to kind of poke our ears up for. But on the other hand, we're journalists, so kind of the job is to often open stuff from strangers. And so if you are dealing with somebody who's not malicious, typically they'll be very compliant about giving documents to you in a different format if you ask for it. So you might say something like, hey, would you mind uploading this? Or like, would you mind taking a screenshot of the part that you're concerned about or that you want me to take a close look at? Could you send me the text of it? There's a lot of different ways to ask for a different version of this that is going to be less risky. PDFs and Word documents are some of the most common ways that we end up seeing some of these types of malware delivered. Unsolicited attachments. So that's one thing. And then also, I mentioned it before, social pressure. Social pressure takes a lot of different forms, but if you start to notice that somebody is trying to make you feel like you need to open this right now, or that the consequences of this email are really dramatic, and all of a sudden you notice that all of your nerves are on fire, that should be a moment where we hit pause and think about this a little bit more, because they're getting more and more clever about how to do these things. If you're not really sure about that link, you don't even have to click on it. You can just go right to the website. If I get a email saying that it's from Google and that there's something funny going on with my account, I'll just go to my Google account. I go to google.com and I'll go look into my account settings from there. I don't need to use their email. So kind of in closing, we want to talk a little bit about future-proofing your plans. There's a lot of different types of things that we can do here. We've talked about some already. I also just want to name some of the final things that we wanted to address were around legal requests as well. We know that this is a big issue around election season. In this example, we had a 3.5 month period from mid-April through July of 2017. The Department of Justice under Trump gathered a bunch of call records from Washington Post journalists in retaliation for reporting that they had conducted around Russia's role in the 2016 election. This included not just work numbers, but also home and cell phone numbers. So as you can imagine, this likely included a lot of conversations with sensitive individuals who are providing information for their stories. But this is not just, Washington Post reporters. This happens to freelance journalists as well. Sometimes they get subpoenas for their phone records. Fortunately, in this case, our reporter actually dropped this request when Amy Harris also dropped her lawsuit against our requesters here. You can check this out in US Press Freedom Tracker that our teammates keep up to date. But that's just a long walk to say, now is a really good time to get started on all of our preparations. We have a lot of support networks in this space. We can be part of your support network. Media organizations across the board are going to be dealing with a lot of parallel issues, and we should be working together to try to make sure that we are empowering each other and supporting each other when it comes to making sure that we are prepared for this election season. And the best time to get started is right now. So I'm really glad that everybody was able to join us to talk about these topics today. We're going to open up for questions. We have a little bit of time, and we can answer any questions folks might have. Feel free to drop them in the chat. This is the last time I get to do this. I get to plug it again. Check out our newsletter at fpf.training/subscribe. A lot of what we've talked about today is dense. The newsletter, by comparison, breath of fresh air, very easy, comes into your inbox once a week, excuse me. And that just has a little bit about the newest in security news, what you can do about it, and then updates from our team. Another thing we want to just make sure that everybody knows about is we have this survey. We always like to make sure that we are getting feedback on our trainings, making sure that we are learning as much as we can about your needs. So definitely make sure to answer this. It only takes a few minutes. We've done it. It's not one of those things where we pull the rug out from under you. It's actually secretly 20 minutes. No, it's actually very, very short. And it's a huge help to us. We dropped the link in the chat, or you can use this QR code here, which redirects to the link that we show here. But yeah, feel free to also drop any questions you might have.
I have a question for you, Martin.
I was going to say, speaking of QR codes, but go ahead, Davis.
Yeah, you're probably, my question's not that serious. Why don't you go for it, Ryan?
Mine isn't either. I think my knee-jerk reaction to QR codes is very similar to biometrics and the face unlock, where it feels wrong, it feels dangerous, and so many restaurants are putting their menus on QR codes. I'm like, just give me something real, please. I don't know what website you're taking me to. Are there any general tips for QR codes?
Yeah, this is actually a principle that I think about a lot, and that is the one of trust. When I think about digital security on this whole, really, I'm thinking a lot about who am I trusting in this chain of communication? Are they trustworthy? Why are they trustworthy? Why are they not trustworthy? And in this case, I am with you 100% where I would prefer a paper menu. I also know that I myself made this link and made this QR code. And I guess the question is, does everyone out there trust me? If not, there's a link in chat that takes you right there. But yeah, humans are very now we're programmed in a way to take us a shot of that QR code and follow the link. And so why fight that when we're really honestly looking for feedback from folks? So I
Yeah.
hope that wasn't too soapboxy an answer.
That was great.
My mobile device has gotten a lot better about this in recent years. It used to be that if I pointed at a QR code, it would just say, okay, we're going there. And now it will give a little preview link. And so I can try to make a guesstimation about whether or not this is something I feel comfortable with. But 100% on the menu thing, I do not like using the QR code to a menu. I want a physical menu. I want to talk to a person. Yeah.
Agreed. Well, we have a very interesting question in chat right now about delete me. So we offer to anyone who is interested an entire session on online harassment. What you got from Martin is just a little taste. Basically, everything we offer to you is just like a little sampler platter. If you can imagine us going around the room with hors d'oeuvres, everything we talked about has a deeper dive. So if you are interested in any of the topics that we talked about today, hit us up at training at freedom.press, and we'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one or set up a training for your newsroom or anything. We love talking about these things. So on the topic of delete me, I have been thinking about this a lot because we have a training coming up that is really focused. They're researching groups that where maybe hackers might come from. So we want to provide them with the best possible service. So I was investigating Delete Me this week. One thing that I struggle with a lot is doing opt-out from data brokers services, which are collecting information, selling it on the background. We have no idea really where all our little points of data are ending up nowadays. And it is a vast ecosystem and our information is worth money. Which is scary. So I was going through and just testing out, opting out on my own, and it is confusing. And I think they obfuscate it on purpose. And so I love Delete Me because someone is an expert on the other end. You put your information in a service, which feels weird. But then if you allow that to happen, then someone who actually knows what they're doing will go through and opt you out of places. I did try, there's 3 data brokers, Axiom is one of them that are really pernicious. And so I did go through the steps of trying to opt out of them. And they told me it's going to take 45 minutes, I wish, 45 days for them to send me a report. So I'm waiting for that. It'll be like mid-June by the time I hear from them. And so I prefer to use a service where I don't have to like do that and then find out later that it's going to take a long time. That was a long answer. Thank you for listening. Martin, what do you think? What do you think of Delete Me and what do you think of opting out one by one? Have you tried it?
Yeah. I've tried it. It is very time consuming and they repopulate a lot of these data broker websites every few months or so. So it is a little bit of a pain in the butt. Speaking of butts, I put this in the chat is journalist Yael Broker, Yael Grauer's big ass data broker opt out list. This is a really great resource for folks who want to kind of get the shortcut version of how to opt out of a lot of these services. There's even little friendly icons to show the high priority ones if that's something that is interesting to you. But I would also definitely plug a service like Delete Me as just a really important resource in the space for helping to expedite some of this, although it does cost much more money, about $129 a year, I believe, for an individual. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you think about how much is your time worth? How many hours you just spend to feel like you've now spent $129 in your lifespan, if that makes any sense.
I do see another question in chat. Anything on the topic of masking your phone number? I know we touched on this in the Signal conversation. Anything more broad with either phone calls or SMS texts around masking your phone number?
Yeah. Well, I can say that in the US and a small number of other countries, probably the easiest free way to do this, if you're comfortable with Google, is using Google Voice. So you can sign up with Google Voice using just one phone number, and then you can get up to 2 phone numbers that they will give you for free that you can use to accept phone calls and text messages. that's one that I use a lot for spam. Like if I don't want to give them my phone number, say at a grocery store, I do remember my Google Voice number and I will give that away. Or like if I met somebody who I'm like, I don't really know if I want to like give them my real number, sometimes I'll give them my Google Voice number instead. Um, that's just one option. There's a lot of different tools out there for this topic, but that's I think probably the easiest one to use right now. Yeah.
Is it ever awkward, Martin, where you can't remember which number you gave somebody?
Definitely, yeah. I'm like, did I, which one did I give? Yeah. Well, I think that might be it. But yeah, we are available to chat about these topics at any time. We have, there we go. We got our emails right here. It's Martin at freedom.press and Davis, excuse me, at freedom.press. And yeah, if you have any additional questions for us, feel free to reach out at any time. We're always happy to chat. And yeah, look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you again for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day.